Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Getting the vowels all mixed up already. Today we're continuing to go through our positional previews for the 2026 drafts. Thank you. And we have Dan Kotnik.
Started. The draft just started.
We have Dan Kotnik on to go over receivers. Dan, thank you for joining us. Always love to have you on, whether we're talking actual football or we're talking top 5 rankings of whatever we feel like talking 5 rankings of. But we appreciate you coming on and joining us again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to come on, and especially Mike, because he's my one niche of Packers fan, Celtics fan, like in the entire, we might be the only two that exist. So
I think so. And yes, we are those two.
And you too, Joe. It's great to see you too, Joe.
We are those kind of fans who blame Wisconsin sports fans for wasting their cheering on other Wisconsin sports teams that should be allocated to the Packers. You know, like, honestly, when Michigan lost to Wisconsin early this season, I messaged Westendorf and was like, you know we're going to lose the playoff game tonight, right? Because all the Badger Packers fans wasted all their pixie dust, and Jacob was like, don't say that. Don't say that. And he was like, damn it, Kawano, you had to say it. I was like, you know I'm right. He goes, I know I didn't want to say it though, but
this trio right here knows about diversifying. We're all across the Big Ten. We've got Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan. Like, you can't. Mike's right. Like, you have to diversify your sports interest. You can't silo yourself.
Well, don't say that because we'll get canceled for DEI or whatever they call it anymore. But when you were talking about how it's good to see Mike because of that niche, I was like, where the hell is he going with this? And so, yeah, okay. But yes, it is baseball season, not basketball season. Opening day was just 2 days ago. The Braves are 2-1, so I'm sitting pretty good right now.
Tigers are looking good. Kevin McGonigal, AL Rookie of the Year. You can book that right now.
That's all right. Ronald Acuna is going to get the comeback player again and the MVP.
Very nice, very nice. All right, before we go too far off the rails and this becomes an OBOT episode, let's get us back on track. So as I said, we're going into receivers today. We're going to stick to our usual programming method where we're going to talk about the current state of the Packers. I believe Joe has an interesting fan question. Do you want to go into that when we do the current state of the roster? Just because it kind of goes hand in hand with that?
Jump right into it if you want.
Yeah, and then we'll recap draft prospects afterward, but as it stands right now,
well, let's go ahead and just go into the question because we've already kind of brought it up a little bit before we started recording. It will lead into the current state of what the Packers have. So, and it's a big question. Everybody seems to have this on their mind, but Goose, our buddy Goose over on the old tweet machine, asked, which wide receiver gets traded this offseason, Reed or Wicks? Can't keep both if you want to draft and build for the future.
So Dan,
who wants to take it first?
You got any feeling on this one first, or you want me to go?
You know, I'll let you go because I think I know going in who's the most likely candidate. But like, I'm also starting to. I'm like, as you brought that up, I like started to like read through again like the current roster of wide receivers, and I'm like, crap. Like, yeah, like they really can't keep both of them on the roster if they want to kind of maintain, do anything in the draft. So I'll let you start.
Okay, and so it's from a draft angle and from just a contract angle. So from the contract angle, all expectations are, unless tragedy happens again, they're going to extend Tucker Kraft, and they have made every indication that they want to extend Watson. And Watson has a lot of questions to answer, but what I will say is the ACL does look like it was a one-off and more for, more due to Lambeau's turf, and he really does seem to have solved the soft tissue injuries that plagued him over his first 2.5 seasons in the NFL. I know that it's tough to make that, supposition, but it's not my money. I'm not the one who has to make that call. I'm not Gruden Rustball, but I do think that with how this past season played out, how his return from the ACL repair went, and just how he played off of it, and how the team looked off of it, I do think they are going to make the effort to extend him, especially before any other receivers sign extensions or new contracts, because I look at like the Pierce deal and some of these other ones that have happened, and I'm like, oh, it's 2021 and Christian Kirk signing a stupid ass deal that priced Devontae out of Green Bay, kind of, that whole PTSD is popping up again. But like Dan kind of mentioned, like, they are in this spot where they are not going to be able to keep. So, and this is the thing, is, some people I see are trying to argue like they can pay 2 receivers, but I'm like, yes, you can, but not if you're paying a Tucker Kraft the money that Tucker Kraft is gonna get. That's your second receiver you're paying, for all intents and purposes. They made a high investment, and then you look at the investment they made in Golden, what Golden did show in the limited snaps he got last season, and I know that he needs to, like, iron down his playbook. Dusty has gone into it. JT O'Sullivan on the QB school has made a lot of comments about, like, there's a lot of high-end stuff that Golden does on film, but there's also a lot of, like, what's he doing here on this play kind of thing. So, but, like, the touchdown he scored against Chicago, that should have been an icer in the playoff game and stuff. And so you see the investment, you see the upside there. And then Savion. The thing with Savion is I don't know if his future is at wide receiver. I don't know if they're going to Ty Montgomery / Cordarrelle Patterson him in the next year or two. But, they're going to give him an opportunity. Like, I know it's one play, but his 4th down conversion against the Giants this past season, it's one of those, they don't have another one of those type of guys, because Watson's tall and really athletic, but he doesn't leverage his athleticism that same way that Savion can, just because he's more of a speed downfield deep threat kind of guy. And, he's, at least so far, he's shown to be better at running under passes than, him and Love just have this weird lack of chemistry, timing. Part of it's due to the time he's missed and all that kind of stuff. So I say all those things to get back to the state of the roster is you have 6 guys that you're like, if no trades happen, these 6 guys are pretty much locks to make the regular season roster. And that's Christian, Golden, and I'm naming these in a certain order for a particular reason. So Watson, Golden, Williams, Moore, and then the 2 that are going to be the object of discussion in Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks. And now, I know that Joe and Dan kind of hinted at, like, okay, they're in this odd spot because you're trying to contend. So I kind of go to what I said about Dobbs last offseason, where I'm like, I wouldn't do it. But if you got a starting corner, this, it's the same thing as last offseason with the Dobbs. I was like, you have to get a starting player of Dobbs' caliber back. And in this instance, that's why I say, I think the guy is Reed, because I think Reed can get you a better player in return. And this is my belief, but also it's backed by how they've deployed Reed. He doesn't play on the perimeter. He almost predominantly plays slot snaps. And I think he's going to earn him based on his top-tier big play-making ability. But the down-to-down consistency is still very concerning to me. Like, everyone out Wicks, out Dobbs, but I'm like, Reed is as bad as those guys, or worse in some degrees, as a dropsy guy. And he just makes enough big plays that the average Packers fan is like, it's fine, like, he offsets kind of thing. But I'm like, you look at the playoff game, that drop in the, late in the 4th quarter, that would have gotten them into they would have gotten into scoring range, and the ball would have been out of bounds. Like, it's those kind of plays where it's like, it's the down-to-down, can I count on this guy to make the 6-yard catch that's going to set us up for 2nd and short? Can I count on him to make the simple 3rd down catch to convert to a 1st down? It's those kind of plays. Like, yes, the big plays are awesome. They're great to see, but that's also, like I said, why I think he'd have the higher return on investment in a trade, because other teams are like, this is the big play guy, and if we're gonna get big plays, Wicks is more of a in theory guy than he is a proven commodity in that sense, where it's like, yeah, he was really dependable last season, but we haven't seen consistent big plays out of him, and that's where I just think if you had to, and you were gonna get a starting corner or some sort of starter in return, Reed is the guy that makes more sense. Just because I do think there's an opportunity you could bring Wicks back on a cheaper deal next year, but I think Reed, just because of his track record as a big play guy, I think he's just gonna earn a contract that's worth like 20 plus million a season. And Green Bay, if they do, like I said, the two moves I'm expecting, Tucker and Watson, they're just not gonna be able to pay a guy who's really a third option that kind of money. It's just not, it's not financially it's not a fiscally responsible method of running your roster to invest what is going to be like $70 million in three guys, and one of them who doesn't even play like 80% of your snaps on offense in Reed.
Yeah, I definitely I second pretty much everything you said there. If it comes down to it and you have to say one of these guys is the odds-on favorite to get traded, it has to be Jaden Reed, because they're not gonna trade Christian Watson. That's a definite. Like, they're not gonna trade Matthew Golden. Those two right there off the board, they are untouchable wide receivers. Then you start to get into everyone else it's Wicks, Reeds, Williams, Sky Moore. Okay, all four of those guys are to an extent either role player or rotational guys, or in the case of Savion Williams, more of a gadget, like kind of like very unique position kind of player. Personally, for me, I start to lean more that, and this is separate from the question itself, because I think the question answered is Reed is the most likely to get traded. I wouldn't be surprised if they more went the route of draft a wide receiver 3rd, 4th, 5th round, somewhere in there, that fits more of a Dontavian Wicks kind of mold, and they either trade or release Savion Williams before the end of training camp and roll into it with that. Because I think the way they see it is Watson's your number one. Golden is the heir apparent to Christian Watson / kind of guy that they want to develop to be sort of the guy that I think they will have in their back pocket when they eventually do have to move on from Christian Watson. Reed is your slot guy. Wicks is just too valuable as a blocking wide receiver, and also actually one of the more sure hands on the team. I wonder if they would decide to do that more and say, okay, it's time to, if we're in the championship window here, it's time to move on from these little pet projects like Savion Williams and say we can't afford to spend 2-3 more off seasons seeing where we can develop him and spending a roster spot for a guy that has like 5 plays specifically designed for him. So either Savion Williams needs to develop into something more valuable, or they say we're going to move on from you and we're going to bring a guy in that fits that Wicks style, Tucker Kraft blocking pass catcher kind of profile a little bit more, and does more for their offense from a versatility standpoint.
I'm going to say this in all due respect. Shut the hell up with that Savion Williams talk. We have no idea what we have in Williams right now because he spent a majority of last season injured.
I know, a boat's a boat, but a mystery box could be anything.
Well, yeah, but the thing is you just said one thing that also offsets what you're talking about with Williams is you called Dontavian Wicks sure-handed. He has had exactly one season where you could call him sure-handed. Before that, if you remember right, we were all thinking, is Dontavian Wicks even going to make the team because he can't get his drops worked out? So it's kind of the same boat there. that, Savion's been injured, has only had like a handful of plays to really show what he can do, and in those limited plays, he's been, he's flashed here or there. I mean, look at it this way: he got his first career touchdown before they even let Matthew Golden get his first career touchdown. So, that's a possibility. But, all joking aside with that, last year was still only Savion's rookie year. So there's no way that they can cut bait on a third-round draft pick after 1 year of injury-filled, unless, I don't know, he fucking threatens to beat the hell out of Matt LaFleur, or
unless there's a like different sense of urgency in the front office. That's sort of my point. Is you're right, Joe. Like, it would be very off-brand for them to move on from a decent round draft pick like Savion Williams that early. That's my thing. Is this is with the contract extensions and a little bit more of the added pressure here of the window. I wonder if they would decide to change that up a little bit.
I don't think so. I think it would be a lot different if he were to say in the same boat as like a Malik Heath or Will Shepherd or something like that, because he was drafted higher. They have higher ideas for him. Had he not spent most of last season with an injury, we don't know where he would be at. Right? Again, I think the only reason they would move on from him, from Williams specifically at this point, is, again, he threatens Matt LaFleur or, goes 190 down, what's the road coming out of Green Bay? 30... is it 35?
I thought it was like 41.
God, I can't think of it. Yeah, something like that. Or, he's doing donuts in the middle of 1265's parking lot or something like that
gets catfished by an OnlyFans model and someone impersonates him for a $4 million loan.
Or goes the opposite way and gets catfished like Manti Te'o did, and the guy goes on Dr. Phil and outs him for something. Those are the only reasons I could see them moving on from Savion this early. Now, to go with the Reed or Wicks, I lean towards what you guys said about Reed possibly getting more in value. But I also have the whole, did Dontavian fix his issues with catches, or did he just have an abnormally high year last year for catches? So are you going to be able to rely on him going, for the season, or do you sell as high as you can on him and get what you can out of his value at the moment? We know what we have in Reed. He's the gadget guy, slot guy. Yes, he's going to have some drops, but he's going to also come up with some spectacular catches like the Los Angeles Rams one a couple years ago. We're in between three guys, so on, so on. We know he's also going to bite us in the ass with some drops, but we don't know what's going to happen with Wicks at this point. Is Wicks going to revert back? Is Wicks going to continue to grow? The sad realization is both of them are on their final years this year.
Yeah.
And you're only going to get so much out of either one of them anyway because they are on their final years of their deal. It's not like a Malik Willis type trade where he still had a couple years on his deal and you're going to go. My only thought is, with them not having the first round pick this year and next year, do they use the chance of Reed and Wicks gaining them comp picks for the following year? So do they just go ahead and hang on to them? Because maybe that's this, let's say Jaden goes out and gets him a Christian Kirk style contract and can pull in a 4th round comp pick for him. Is that going to be better than what they can get in a trade for him?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's why I kind of lean towards the the idea of, Williams gets cut for somebody, for a rookie this year, is I think it's much more likely that this team stands pat this offseason with anything with their wide receiver group, and just kind of, basically kind of, just saying we're gonna run it back this year with the pass catchers that we have. Hope everyone stays healthy. Hope the offensive line improves and Josh Jacobs, can have a bounce back season in the offense, and say we're going to move forward with the idea that we have, assuming contract extensions get worked out and everything, Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, and Tucker Kraft as our 3 primary pass catchers, and then either Josh Jacobs or the revived corpse of Marshawn Lloyd, decides to come, and just say that's our core of the offense moving forward, and then we'll fill in as needed as we go. And like you said, either bring Wicks back on a cheaper deal or let both go and try to explore the comp pick situation. But yeah, I think it's much more likely they probably just stand pat. I think anyone kind of asking for trades like this maybe still on a little bit too much of a high of trading for Micah Parsons. I think that was not something to be expected.
It's not something to be expected, but it is a plausible idea because of the fact that both of them are in their final years.
Sure.
We have some giant question marks in the wide receiver room, but I still go with, I still don't think Sky Moore is a lock to make the roster.
Oh, no.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the other side of it.
Because he's not really proven anything outside of being a returner. And can they hold on to a guy strictly to be a returner? If I'm going to do something like that, I'd rather stick with the possibility of a Savion Williams being that kick returner, and then trying to find somebody through draft or UDFA as your, which there are a couple of guys that I can talk about. Cough, cough, Caden Weegan, cough, cough, that you can throw back there to be your special teams ace and will provide for you on offense. I just don't think Sky Moore is that. So, and then, there is the one guy that we keep forgetting that I'm not going to say he's going to be a lock to the roster, but I know they're a little bit high on him, and he could find his way to the roster. He did a little bit a couple of times last year, and that's Will Shepherd, who has pretty good size, pretty good speed, pretty good ability. I think he also dealt with some injuries a little bit across the year last year, but, came in as a UDFA out of Colorado last year. I really liked him. He's specifically in my notes from last year. And so I think there's a lot of options, but to go back and answer Moose's question, which one I think will get traded more, I would probably have to agree with you guys and lean Reed a little bit more, just because of he might be able to pull you in a little bit better pick compensation, or maybe a little bit, maybe you can do something like the trades that the Packers are a little bit known for, where they swap players who just need change of scenery, and we can get somebody to come in and fill in a, maybe a defensive tackle or maybe a cornerback or something like that is on the last year of a deal, and it's just easier to trade a player for a player than as a pick for a player. But I'm going to put on my Sith hood for this one and say that I would rather trade Christian Watson.
Wow.
And my reasoning behind that is similar to the Dontavian Wicks thing. Was last year an abnormality, or is that the Christian Watson we're going to see going forward? He's had the ticky-tacky injuries. We're hoping he's overcome them somewhat. He had the ACL last year. We know that guys can come back from that and play pretty good, but then we also have guys who come back, play good for 1 year on it, and then they seem to tail off, i.e. Rashawn Gary, type situations where they seem to come back and be a comeback player of the year for a season, and then they just end up not doing anything else going forward once they get that bag of money. So do you pay him what he's probably going to get on the open market? Do you sell high on him and get, maybe a third round pick for him? Maybe, maybe a second? Who knows? Goody and Russ Ball are pretty good about what they give and get for compensation, that they don't really get taken on too much. Or do they just let it ride and then have the discussion at the end of the year? I was kind of looking at Watson's hit, and he's got a void year next year. So it is $3 million dead, or $3.7 million dead if they don't do anything with it. His signing is prorated signing is $1.2 million. His regular season roster bonus is $30 million on this void year. So they're going to have to do something with him one way or the other. But if you really want to rebuild things and really want to kind of save on a little bit of money, my thought is you move on from Christian Watson, hang on to the other guys, draft somebody from this draft, because there are some pretty good receivers in this draft, and just continue the growth there. But that's just an out from left field type idea. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but
so
that would be where I would lean a little bit more to it.
Would you say then, let's say you get a third round pick for Christian Watson today. Would you then go into the draft and say you're going wide receiver in round 2 with your first pick at 52?
I think even as of right now, it's a possibility. I know the Packers have a lot of holes that they need to bring in players to, but we also know what the Packers tend to do in the draft. They tend to draft a year early than a year late.
Right.
And, with all the contracts coming up at the end of the season in the wide receiver room, it would not surprise me that in round 2 or 3 that we come out with a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I do think that's a realistic opportunity, because you can't do you can't have the 21-22 lag at the tail end of Rodgers with Love at this point. That's the whole thing I go back to, is it's you keep saying you're trying to be a contender, so you've got to both make moves for this year. And like I said, that's why I wouldn't make this trade. I'm not saying we have to deal one of these guys. It's more about, if you are going to, you have to bring a player back. This isn't I'm not in this for get a draft pick this year. I need a, this needs to be like this needs to be like the Wooden trade, basically, the Wooden for Zaire Franklin trade. I would prefer someone younger than what you got back, but in that vein where it's okay, I'm trading a talented, high flashes but some questions guy out the door, and I've got to get someone who's a starting caliber player coming back. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's over-wishing and stuff, but I'm just saying that's what it would take for me if I was a GM to make this move. And if they do draft a receiver, I think they should, you're going to have to figure out the roster crunch and stuff. But I do think there are quote unquote natural ways, whether it's both of you have pointed out, how much is Moore really going to do on offense? Or, is it Savion, your time's up? Or is it what I pointed out, does he move positions? And that kind of organically opens a wide receiver slot on the roster as well and stuff. So there's options. And before we divulge down that rabbit hole too much, let's get into those guys that we could see the Packers taking on day 2 of this draft, because there are...
One thing I want to interrupt you with on that, Mike.
No, go for it.
I think that if they were going to do any kind of positional change on Savion, they were going to announce it on draft night. because it doesn't make sense to have him go ahead and work with the wide receivers, play with the wide receivers in his rookie year, then a year later, even though he didn't get a full year playing wide receiver, then a year later transition him to a running back style. I think he's going to play what they wanted him to play, which is mainly wide receiver, but be used as that gadget style guy because he's still a big bodied receiver.
Yeah, it'd be crazy to take a wide receiver and put him at like cornerback or something. Bo Melton.
Yeah. Or have him be
Sam
your
Shields.
primary running back.
Sam Shields, exactly. Yeah.
But I only point to it because of how Savion was used last year primarily, and we've seen the Packers do it. It wasn't this coaching staff, but we've seen this organization do it before. And you're right, it's not ideal, Joe, and it did take extenuating circumstances for the Ty Montgomery move to happen, but it did happen, and it is like a realistic possibility kind of thing. So all that aside,
the only reason why they did what they did with him last year is just to try getting him integrated into the offense.
Right.
Because you know just as well as I do, we talked about him last year in the pre-draft, and he was super raw. He hadn't played with an actual quarterback in like a year and a half, and he was the primary guy in their offense forever that they just needed to get him involved in the offense.
that's fair. All right. So now that we've gone down like 42
any other interruptions I can make at the moment.
Now that we've gone through 42 different veins of what the Packers could do with this position group as it stands, let's talk about the kind of guys they could be looking at in this draft class. So, Dan, we've kind of laid it out. Like, I know a lot of people are like, they won't draft a receiver. The year they took Devontae was kind of in this situation where it was sort of like, okay, Jordy's under contract, Cobb is up after that year, what are you going to do? And, it's like, was receiver really a need? And that's why I liken the situation this year to the 2014 draft where, and that's the thing is like, there's positions of need at defensive tackle and corner, but where those positions have value, I don't know if Green Bay is going to be able to tap into that before they get to the 52nd pick. Whereas I feel like there's going to be a few solid wide receivers available at 52 and 84, however the numbering works in that case. So, Dan, Packers come up in either round 2 or round 3. Who are some names you've got your eye on?
Yeah, the one that I've like started to really fall in love with, and I mean it's not. This is a name that I think.
Can I make a guess?
Sure.
Can I make a guess? Because This has been a popular name that's been popping up everywhere right now. Can I guess that he comes out of Georgia State?
No.
Okay.
No. But second round. I think his stock is going to kind of start to rise a little bit more as we get closer. So I'm kind of worried that he wouldn't be available here. But Elijah Surratt from Indiana, like profile wise, just seems to fit like what the Packers love to have in a just like if you were saying wide receiver. He is a Packer wide receiver. He's not Christian Watson, where it's speed, or it's Devontae Adams, breaking down, at the line of scrimmage type thing. He's a tremendous blocker. He's got the great size, and the other thing too that I really like about him is everywhere he's gone to play, he's produced. He produced at James Madison, came to Indiana, produced there as well, and he had I forgot to write it down in my notes. The actual number one wide receiver out of Indiana that like took all of the Cooper. Like he was able to produce at a very high level with a legitimate first round wide receiving prospect opposite him as well. Like it helped that Indiana's offense was like weirdly potent this year. But I'll throw that in the same way of like that's why I think Carnell Tate is a really good prospect. He's playing opposite Jeremiah Smith, a guy that's gonna go in the first round, in next year. He'll probably come out next year. He's still able to produce at that level opposite a legitimate starting wide receiver. And just Surratt fits what I think they want to look for in a wide receiver. That's what I'll say is like when I looked at guys that I am profiling, I'm looking at for the Packers this year, it is more in that vein of Wicks, because let's say they roll into the end of next season and have Watson and Golden under contract as your 1 and 2. Tucker Kraft gets the extension, so you've got those 3. And if we just assume Wicks and Reed both walk in free agency, I think it's more important to replace the Wicks type body style and play style than it is to do with Reed. Reed, I think you can fit Golden into that role a little bit more. So when I'm looking at a wide receiver, the Packers targeting this year, it fits more of that Dontavian Wicks style of play, and I think Elijah Surratt is a really good fit for that profile.
That's a really good name.
Look up something real quick.
Yeah, Surratt he's a fun watch, and he is like the guy where when he got a little dinged up this season, you saw a lot of Indiana fans go like, oh God, like, is he going to be back? Is he going to be healthy? Like, because like you said, Cooper was like the de facto number 1, but Surratt was the guy who did a little bit of everything for that team, and by that function was the like heartbeat of that offense. And that's the thing is like sometimes it's hard to figure out in college players whether they're doing a little bit of everything because it's the jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, and like they're kind of hiding all their cons by having them line up everywhere, do a bunch of like gadget plays and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Surratt, I agree with you, Dan, where he is that guy where it's like, oh no, like he does all these things because he can actually do all these different things, and it's sort of like Cobb in the backfield in that sense, or like putting Devontae in the slot, or like how all like the past 15 years of Packers number 1 receivers, the thing was you start as a perimeter guy, and then as you get more seasoned, you become a guy who can operate out of the slot and the perimeter at like an equal clip, and it really just helps you screw up opposing coverages, because then you have, oh shit, Jordy Nelson's is the inside receiver in a trips formation, who's covering him kind of thing, and it's those kind of it's that kind of flexibility that I think they're really going to look for. And like I said, that not to keep beating the same dead horse, but that's where my thing with Reed is I'm like, it would be different if we'd seen him used as a perimeter receiver more and more as his career's gone on, but that has decreased as time has gone on. And I do think, like you said, Dan, they are moving away from guys where it's like, we need a slot receiver, and now it's like, okay, we just need to get back to, we need receivers who can do everything, and that's where Surratt does check off a lot of boxes. And yeah, like, it is just funny that we're talking about a Indiana Hoosiers wide receiver as like that's the guy that we want, and it's not, his name is not Antoine Randall L for those of a certain age, but it like this is the new era of college football. And yeah, Surratt's a really good name to bring to the forefront there.
The only thing that I got to add to that is if you go by and like I said last week, Mafi finally gave me access to his database. It says that he's got a below or a poor blocking grade, and the Packers love them some blocking wide receivers, so that could knock him out of there. But I was trying to look up his RAS because I wasn't sure of it off the top of my head, and he didn't participate in any of the
I was gonna say
I think he was pretty.
Yeah,
I think he was pretty banged up by the time the season ended, and so he just kind of said, "Screw it, I'm gonna just ice it up and stuff." And I agree, like the blocking stuff, it's always hard because like, you get guys like Watson, who was just like a blocking phenom even at NDSU, and part of that is because they ran like the triple option for all intents and purposes. But then you get guys like Dobbs, who were, was rated in college as like depending on who scouted him, you got anywhere from the he sucks as a blocker to the blocking's not his game kind of thing. But it's like, I do think Surratt falls more in the Dobbs category, where it's like, well, he's the number one receiving option, so like, how many times do you really want this guy blocking for you? Like, it is the whole like, and he's on a passing team, whereas Watson, yeah, he was the number one option, but NDSU wanted to run the ball every 7 days from Sunday kind of thing. So it's not an apples to oranges thing, but it is one where it makes you kind of think like, like, would they heavily consider that, or would they look at the versatility and all the other things he brings to the table? So it is an interesting point to bring up, but I do wonder, it's one of those where there's no like, I'm not going to count on PFF or whatever grades for wide receiver blocking on a run play kind of thing. So there's no like stats for how well a receiver blocks.
Mossy has his own grades that he
That's
gives
true.
than PFF, because I don't think any of us really trust PFF.
That's true. And like I said, it's always hard to tell how well a guy who is a team's primary receiving option should be expected to block. That's my main point about it, is like,
and I get that. I just know standards. I just know how the Packers are with their shit, and they are the type of team that it doesn't matter if you're number 1 or number 5 on the depth chart. If we put you out there to block, you better be throwing your body at somebody. And not saying that they won't take a chance on Surratt. I agree. He's riding high. He's very productive out of college. I think it's to the point that anytime a team has these high caliber players and win the national title, they're obviously going to get drafted a little bit higher than they may have previously. So that's my only knock there, but I don't think that's going to be an issue with him. So yeah, I'd have no issues. Like I said, if the Packers had a first round pick this year, next year, I would have no qualms saying that they're going to come out of this draft with at least 2 wide receivers. But with the low side of draft capital, I'm not sure if I can comfortably say that. Unless, and this is the only caveat I'd add to it, is if they trade down. So maybe not pick at 52, they take a trade package, late second round pick and a couple extra later round picks, and go from there. But it would not surprise me at all if all the wheeling and dealing Goody does on draft weekend, that the Packers do end up with at least 2 out of this draft. What do you got, Mike? I'm going to let you go next.
Okay,
and can I make a guess on it? Is a kid out of Georgia State?
No. So,
Joe,
okay, I'm going to
go and talk about the kid out of Georgia State.
Well,
no, I'm going to...
The only reason I keep bringing him up is because it seems like now that the Packers have officially spoken to him as one of the visits, his name is being brought up everywhere. So that's the only reason I keep joking about, is that the guy from Georgia State.
So, mine, I'm going to come at it from a different angle. I'm going to go with a guy that I can't see Green Bay taking, even if he's on the board in like round 3, and that's Jordan Tyson. And the highlights for Tyson are great. Like, he has moves off the line of scrimmage that are elite for a college receiver, coming into the NFL. He has good separation skills, good hands. The injury history is just so concerning for me. Like, you have just knee injury, they're all lower body. And then the big concern for me is, like, he's had like 2 different knee injuries. And then this past year, it was like all soft tissue, like a long-term hamstring issue and stuff. And the concern I have there is, like, if I can get him day 3, I would be doing jumping jacks for an hour kind of thing if they got him in like round 4 or something. That's like the steal of the draft. But day 2, it's still in that range where I'm like, my PTSD is like, okay, like, sure, he didn't have issues with the knee structurally, but are the soft tissue injuries a sign that, like, he's still not totally right, and now his body is, like, overcompensating and can't handle the like, that the fact that his knee is never going to be 100% again anymore. And that's where, like, as an organization, they have hands in checking medical records and all that kind of stuff. But Tyson is the one where, like, I think 3 is where you get into the, like, okay, I could see the Packers maybe being intrigued because the upside, like I said, is so high. But the injury history is just so multi-layered, and, like, it's deep both vertically and horizontally in terms of, like, there's a lot of injuries and they're bad injuries too, kind of thing. And from that standpoint, I'm like, I don't know if I could, if it was me, I don't know if I could pull the trigger on him in day 2. Like, I just think that's just a bridge too far for me. But how do you two see Tyson as a prospect, and where would you feel comfortable taking him?
Man, I don't think I feel comfortable taking it at all. That,
and like
it's an alphabet soup, his injury list. It's rough, man. And there's also you call this what is it, the logo bias? There's something about that Arizona State, like, team the last couple of years. I just don't trust any, like, it all of their success felt very inflated. And so, like, I know we played elsewhere, but, like, just coming out of Arizona State now, it's like I just have this weird thing, like, everything there feels kind of overinflated, and I just worry about, like, it screams a guy that is never going to be able to make an impact, and is just a constant, like, it's Jamon Moore. It feels like a Jamon Moore. Like you're expect like this was a big steal. Like, I mean, it would be big for Tyson to fall down to 52, I think. And I don't think, but, like, let's just say, for the sake of this argument, he falls somewhere in, like, 3rd round, and you take him. It feels like that kind of thing where, like, the Packers are betting on this upside and betting on the injury history, and it's just like you said, I have too much PTSD from, like, past things, past instances like this where they try that out and it bites them in the ass. And again, like, they are, I just feel like the moves that they've made so far this off season, the few that they have been, they all feel very targeted to, we need to bring in guys that are going to fill the very specific spots that we need. And when they come in, they're going to be there for a specific role. And I just don't know how much they're willing to gamble on these very precious few draft picks that they have on someone like this. And if they want to go somewhere where it's more of a sure bet. I think maybe more so, I'm just trying to speak that into existence than anything else.
I'll be honest, I really didn't watch him, 1, because of the injury history, 2, because the way people are talking about him, he's probably not even going to be at 52. So I tried to maintain a lot of guys or watch a lot of the guys that are either going to be at 52 or later. Now, just looking off of Mafi's notes, he's going to be 22 this year, so he still is relatively young. But Mike, you might know a little bit better than I do on this. Mafi says his arm length is 30 inches and a quarter. Would that be considered too short in the Mafi verse?
So, like, you're getting into the range where there's, like, one guy they've drafted with arms that short who's been really successful. And yeah, it's Greg Jennings, but Greg Jennings also had that, like, weird frame where it's like, if you told me, like, before I really got into all the draft stuff, where it's like, if you told me his arms were that short, I'd be like, no way. Like, you just watch Greg play, and he had, like, broad shoulders, so, like, his wingspan, like, made up for the fact that his arms were short. But you watched how, like, Jennings would range for balls kind of thing and stuff. And that's the thing, is, like, it just, having a physical limitation like that, it just does make it puts more pressure on all the other parts of your game to play up to mask that deficiency as a pro. It's part of the reason I think they're kind of look at Reed and they're like, he can't play on the perimeter because he's just not physical enough, and not like his physical limitations are too much to play on the perimeter. Whereas Golden has shown that he both has the ability to win with his quickness and with just his like the way he physicals or mentally thinks out the game. He can win in both those facets. So like it's the part of like college scouting where it's that it's the magic P word, projection, where it's like, yeah, this guy shows the ability to do certain things in college, but it's like when you put these other problem-solving things in front of them, what are they going to do? And like I said, I think Tyson has a solid release package off the line of scrimmage. The way he can move in and out of breaks, he creates simple. It's a lot of wicks. It's a lot of atoms coming off the line of scrimmage. My whole thing is like, and Dan and I have both gone over it. It's the whole, okay, like everyone belly aches over Marshawn Lloyd. And, to an extent, Christian Watson. This is like if you played out the first 2 years of Watson or Lloyd's career and you're like, I'm going to draft that guy anyway, kind of thing. And, like, without the high-end production. So it's like drafting Lloyd now, given how the first 2 seasons of his career. Like, that's how I look at Tyson. Is it fair? Different people are going to, like, argue both ways on that one. But for me, I can't do that at 52. Like Dan said, not that you should expect rookies to save your roster. It's going to be on the guys who are here already taking leaps forward. But to buttress your roster where if, you need to get into a next man up mentality, how can I count on a guy who hasn't even been able to stay healthy for his own team to come in and be healthy for our team? And like Dan said, that's one of the things that I thought they made with moving to the guys they did this offseason, where it's like they're all guys who have relatively been healthy over their careers. I know St. Juice, but he's more of like he's like a down the roster special teamer guy kind of thing. But like Franklin, yeah, his advanced stats were down, but he plays every week kind of thing. And same with Moore. It's like he's a smaller guy, but for the most part he's been pretty healthy in his career. So it's like, yeah, like maybe they're not the cream of the crop necessarily for what the outsiders are thinking, but at least you're like, okay, this guy's going to be able to suit up for me 16 or 17 weeks out of the season. And I think that's a big part of why, like you said, Joe, I think some other team is going to be enticed by the talent, and, he's still getting first-round buzz. You see a lot of the guys like, like a lot of the draft nicks with some meat on their, like, to their name, who still are like, what, screw it, I don't care the injury history, like, I'm willing to bet on the upside and talent. But like Dan said, there's just too much recent and fanhood long PTSD on injuries where it's like, I can't, for a team like Dan, like we all three of us have said, for a team that's on the precipice of being truly in the contender tier, the Super Bowl contending tier, it's like, I can't play Russian roulette with a second round pick, like you said, Joe, when we have no first round pick either.
So I agree with all of that, and I just got to throw out there, if a team is going to take a guy, if a team will have no issues taking a guy like Caleb Farley in the first round with his extensive injury history, then I have no doubts that somebody will take a flyer on Tyson. But no, the arm thing, the only difference that I have to say between him and Jennings is Mafi has Tyson down here as 6'2" with those arms. Jennings was 6 foot, if that, and with those arms. So he was kind of more body, what's the word for it? He was more,
Jennings was he was like a stocky build too. Yeah.
Proportioned. He was more proportioned with his body than a 6'2" guy. But now I am going to mention the guy from Georgia State, Ted Hurst, but he's not the guy that I really want to bring up at the moment.
Please actually say his name. We're going to lose whatever credibility we have if we keep referring him to as the guy from blank.
From Georgia State.
Well, the only reason, like I said, the only reason I say
No, I'm just teasing.
To know him at the moment, because Easton Butler came out and said that the Packers did officially meet with him, so now his name is everywhere. Yeah. And they all, I sometimes, I never believed in the whole we're in the Matrix and, things are like happen, once you think of something, then it's everywhere. So far doing this draft stuff, it's happened twice. Once is the Ted Hurst thing, and the second is another guy that I'm going to talk about later. And I pulled him off of PFF as he was like ranked 432nd out of the PFF list, and I was like, and he goes to Youngstown State. It's like nobody's ever going to talk about this guy. I've found 2 Packer articles talking about this guy. And it's like, what? But anyway, Ted Hurst, Georgia State, good size, good hands. He's a good hands catcher. I liked his routes, but I thought he could be a little bit quicker out of them. That's one of those things in the NFL. You need to be there before the ball gets there. And, with Jordan Love's quick release, it's going to get there pretty quick. So you need to make that a little bit better. He's got some pretty good wiggle to him. Definitely has breakaway speed. He's got good height, but the listed weight that I saw for him, I didn't look at what they had at the combine or if he was even at the combine, what they had it listed for him. But
they had him at 206 at the combine.
Okay, then that's a lot better than what I was seeing, because they had him at like 185 the last
that's
listed.
what I was seeing, yeah.
And it's like I think he was like 6'2", 185. It's like the height's good, the weight is a problem. But there's one thing that I've been thinking about this whole draft process is we're all going off old school thresholds. We're going to have to start making changes because, like, when we talked about linebackers, there were no prototypical linebackers from what we're used to. When we were talking about running backs, there's no prototypical running backs like we're used to. The same thing is with the wide receivers. There's no prototypical wide receiver like we're used to. They're all either tall but lanky, short but stocky, good route runners but no speed to them. Lots of speed, but can they catch a cold? There's no prototypical thing to them. So, and that was one thing that I noticed going through Easton Butler's list of guys that the Packers have met with. There's like 3 or 4 guys that they've met with that are like 5'7", 200 pounds. And it's like the Packers
they're
never
built like me.
The thing is, the Packers never touched those friggin' type of wide receivers. Unless it's like a UDFA or something. And some of the guys that they were talking to, possibly are going to get drafted in this year's draft. And it's like, that's kind of interesting. And then you talk about, like we were talking about a little bit last week with running backs, they've been linked to Devin A-Chain, and he's 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing. So are the Packers looking at these different thresholds at some of these guys? So I brought up Ted Hurst, but the main guy that I wanted to bring up, and I've kind of seen some guys not talk about him or say he's had some issues, but I didn't really see it in the games that I watched, and that's Skylar Bell out of UConn. And I thought he was another one that had pretty good size. His speed looked good. I thought his routes were pretty good. And he's pretty deceptive with his routes. And the reason I say that is you see him go out on the route, you see a guy covering him, and then the next thing you know, he's wide open. And it's like, how the hell did you just get wide open? There's a guy over there, there's a guy over there. And it just kept surprising me every time I would watch a snap from him. He's fucking wide open again. What the hell's going on here? I think in one of the draft groups that they've mentioned that he's kind of had an issue with drops. But again, I didn't look at that with the stats, so I'm not sure. But I think he could be a 3rd or 4th round guy, maybe sneak into the 2nd round, and that. But I think he would be a pretty good pickup.
So Bell, like you said, I don't know if it's necessarily drops, but it's that he's not really a hands catcher. He likes to catch a lot of things, and so that was my big note on him is like, okay, like I know in the modern NFL you can't like touch anybody anymore, but there is still a difference to being a hands or body catcher. That was my big note on him. But overall, like you said, he fits more of like what like Thompson kind of picked a while ago, where like I said, retaining driver, picking Jennings, like Jones a little bit. Jones was a little taller, but like these kind of stockier wide receiver options than what Goot has kind of gone for. Where like Goot had the year where it was like. I'm taking Jamon, MVS, and EQ all in the same draft, and these all like 6'4" and taller kind of thing. MVS and EQ were like 9.50, 9.5 RAS guys. Jamon like was faster than his time speed kind of guy and stuff. So it like you said, it's really interesting really, because. Well, it doesn't matter when you can't catch the ball, but the really interesting one is a point you brought up, Joe, where it's like, what is the modern body type? Like, and like you said, they're either tall and skinny or they're short and stocky kind of thing. You don't see a lot of guys like Javon Walker where he was 6'3", 215, and like tested, like he like reset the testing standards on RAS, like that kind of player. They just don't make them like that anymore.
Normally would take was the 6'2", 6'3", 210, 215 style of receiver.
Right, and even Watson kind of stretched it because I think he was listed at like 205 coming out of college or something like that. He wasn't like huge coming out of college. I think now he's probably like 225, 230 or whatever kind of thing. But he wasn't that coming out of NDSU, and so that's where like Hurst has. Maybe an opportunity, and I've seen a lot of Packers Packers people doing the like, they don't do. I don't know how to calculate it, but I understand what they're getting at. Where it's like, if a guy is like 6'5", they don't go like more than X amount of percentage between like where that falls on his height versus where his weight falls, kind of thing. But like you said, Joe, Hurst guys built like Hurst are kind of becoming the norm, where it's like. There are just a lot of guys who are 6'4" and above and like weigh 210 sopping wet maybe kind of thing. And my thing with Hurst is I can talk myself into him like I talked myself into the Savion pick in the 3rd round last year. There's just the small school thing. It's a little worrisome for me because like, how much of that is a like man amongst boys, like, and that was the thing where like when we had Dusty on last year and we were talking about the Bowling Green tight end that the Browns ended up taking.
Fannin.
Fannin, thank you. Boy. Yeah, and like one of the things that Dusty and I were like praising him over is like he played his best against like the best competition that he faced, where it was just like, okay, Harold, no one else is going to do Jack Diddley squat against Penn State or whatever, so you're going to get 30 targets and please make catches on half of them and maybe we'll have a chance to win the game. And like I said, it's not necessarily fair or unfair, but it is one of those like, okay, like, can I see you make some plays against the top competition you face? And you look at the last couple of years, and that's the thing with like Hurst is it's like he's got Georgia Tech, didn't have a good game, 2 catches, 26 yards. UConn 7 for 91, but UConn isn't exactly a top of the line. What's it called? Isn't exactly a top of the line college team at this point. That was 2 years ago. He had a really good game against Vanderbilt. I don't remember how Vandy was 2 years ago. But then this past year they played. Yeah, they got murdered. And then this year though they play Ole Miss in the opener and he has 1 catch for 6 yards. And it's like, I'm not expecting you to set the world on fire against a power 4 opponent, but I need to see some production. Like, it doesn't have to be efficient production, but I need to see that you're gonna produce, whether it's like I understand if he's getting like 8 yards of reception, but if he has like 6 catches, I'm like, I can live with that because the windows are tighter, the quarterback's probably not power Div 1 equivalent and all that kind of stuff. So that is one of those, like, I need to see a little more when you face the top competition. That said, you're right that, like, the movement skills, the catching radius, it's all like, ideal for, like I said, how Goot has drafted perimeter wide receivers in the past. So, like I said, I could see him round 4, round 5, but, like, I could talk myself into round 3 because it gets into the whole, okay, at least I can see the vision of, okay, like, we're getting back to these power forward bodied X and Z body type wide receivers who can maybe play in the slot eventually, but it's it would be a little rich for my blood, but take it with the grain of salt of tell me what the board looks like, who are the edge rushers, who are the defensive tackles, who are the corners when they draft and stuff. So yeah, like I said,
not just
as
that,
long
but
as
how many times do people like us say, oh yeah, he's going to be, this is why I don't put round grades on guys. Oh yeah, he's going to be a second rounder. He's going to be a second rounder. And then he goes undrafted.
Yep. And that's without the bong mask. So Dan, anyone else on day 2 that you would be pretty pleased if the Packers took?
Yeah. The other two that I threw in here at round 2, and they're pretty standard names, but I think it's, again, they're both sort of in that same vein. And this is one, again, that I think that's getting some talk around the Packers a lot, and that's Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. Again, like, it seemed like had sure hands as like one of the main things, and size wise, I forgot to write down what he was, but Bernard, 6'1", 204, like it just it's again that same vibe of not gonna set the world on fire from a pure raw athletic standpoint, but I think is able to fall in as a rotational number 2, number 3 type wide receiver and be able to do a little bit of everything in terms of really focusing more on we want you here as someone to support everything else around it, and when you have your opportunities, you're going to make the most out of it. And the other one too was Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame. Again, kind of that same idea of the raw athleticism is not like now I'm forgetting the name that you were just talking to, Ted Hurst, Joe. Like he's not going to be as athletically quick or fast as Ted Hurst, but I think it's more of I was trying to pick guys that I thought much more likely going to be there in round 2, no matter how the board kind of falls. And Malachi Fields, every time like I've been doing mocks, it's like Malachi Fields sitting there at number 2, and I'm like, just it feels like a type of player that fits right into what they sort of want. So those are the other 2 guys that I had kind of like listed as my round 2. So Jeremy Bernard, Elijah Surratt, and Malachi Fields.
I'm actually gonna pull an Offie impression and tell you, Dan, Malachi Fields is not what the Packers are looking for in a wide receiver.
Okay.
No,
this is why I'm me and I'm not Mafi.
But I watched him. I struggled watching him because it just, he's a big-bodied receiver. He's not the fastest on the field. He was pretty physical. I have wrote down here he wasn't much of a blocker because there wasn't much there in the blocking. But his routes looked okay. I did say he had a nice stop and go. When he would do a stop and go route, that was an amazing. But looking off his testing, which that's the only thing we can go off of right now, 4.6, 140. His shuttle was a 4.35 and his cone was a 6.98. And I think those all fall outside of Packer parameters per se. So I would struggle seeing Malachi be a Packer. Bernard, I didn't watch Bernard this year because every year I've watched an Alabama guy said, I would love to see that Alabama guy on the Green Bay Packers, and that Alabama guy never ends up on the Packers. So I'm hoping there's a reverse. Well, yeah, J.K. Scott, but I never watch J.K. Scott because I don't watch punters unless they're Australian and they go to the University of Iowa.
Hashtag punting is winning.
So it just, I'm hoping for a reverse jinx here, that at some point the Packers will take a high Raz Alabama guy. The only thing I wouldn't want Bernard to do is go for jump ball, because his vertical was really shitty at a 32.5. So, I don't know how much ups he has, but everything else tested out well. So I'd be all for it. Like I said, Alabama seems to produce a lot of good receivers, as long as they can keep their head on their shoulders and not get into like high-speed crashes or some stupid shit like that. But Mike, what you got? I've been rambling a lot here.
So, what's it called? I'm gonna have to hop off soon. So one guy that also falls into my I could see them taking him. Okay, I can't see them taking him day 2 because he tore his ACL late in the season. Is Chris Bell, the wide receiver out of Louisville, and he's one of those kind of a throwback for the Packers, where he's 6'2", 220, and he is explosive as all hell as an athlete. Gonna have to see how he looks after the ACL repair, but one of those guys where you're kind of can he run more than 3 routes? And it's just that Louisville doesn't ask him to, or he only does run a dig, a slant, and a go route kind of thing.
A lot of that with the guys I watch. It's do they not run routes or?
Right. And that was one of the things with Golden, is it was there was a lot of people who were he doesn't run all the routes. I'm that's because Texas only asked him to do 4 things, and I was if you go back in his Houston film, he runs a lot of different funky routes, and it's just a matter of Texas is just no one can cover you from the slot if you run that deep over route. No one on the perimeter can match you on a deep comeback or anything. So yeah, it's it gets into that whole nuance.
Quarterbacks had noodle arms, so they couldn't throw. It to him anyway.
BB gun arm quarterbacks. But Bell is a different case, where it's I said, on one it's sort of Savion where it's there's a little bit of the man amongst boys thing with him, because it's he's physical. The thing with him is I like that he understood he's physical and knew how to box guys out within a route. And you saw it when Louisville played Miami, because he scored 2 long touchdowns off of slant routes, basically, because he kind of James Jones the slant route, where he showed his back to the corner tried to play through him, kind of just fell off him at the catch point, and then he just takes off because he runs I think Mafi said he was unofficially timed at a sub 4.4 in camp or something like that. And you saw it in that Miami game, where it was he just erased all the angles after the catch in that game, and was the big reason Louisville was up a lot of that game on Miami. And like I said, he's one that I can't see Green Bay taking him round 3 or 2, because while the talent and upside is
4, 4, 5.
Yeah, like I said, there's questions about how how expansive is his route running, and then also the whole, Dan and I were going on earlier, how much is he going to play for you this year, because he got hurt kind of late in the season, and it's it's one thing for Tucker to blow his knee out, or Micah to blow his knee out in November, and you're okay, they're in the pro rehab system, they're in an NFL medical system. Bell or anyone in that situation where you get hurt your last year, it's half your rehab time is in a college program, and it's I know that a lot of them have good programs, but you're not gonna get the dedicated care that an NFL or any other professional athlete is gonna get, rehabbing from a major surgery and injury. So he's another one that I don't see Green Bay doing it, but Hurst, for different reasons, I wouldn't have to talk myself into it for very long to get behind the pick. Granted, like I said, and it's the biggest grain of salt with any of these receivers on day 2. I don't know what the board's gonna look like. If you tell me that the board sucks, like I said, at tackle, maybe center, cornerback definitely, tackle, defensive tackle definitely, and edge probably. If it sucks at those 5 positions, screw it. Take a tight end, take a receiver, I don't care, kind of thing. But if it's like, oh, like Chris Johnson slipped to 52 and you took a receiver, I'm kind of like, all right, like what are we doing here, Packer? Like, then it gets into the like, okay, like I might love the receiver they took, and at the same time I'm gonna be like, but I loved Chris Johnson kind of thing. It's like, it's sort of the whole like, you have to get a guy that I'm in love with that guy. That was my whole thing with the Jair situation in 2018 because Derwin James was my guy. Like, we traded back with New Orleans. We were still in position to draft Derwin James, and then we traded back again, and I was like, damn it. And then I was like, okay, I still really like Jair, and I like Jair at the 18th pick way more than I did at like 13th or wherever we would have been picking. But yeah, it gets into that territory of I'm like, okay, you still have to get a guy that I really like, but there can't be guys at positions that I think are needs that I love, available, or I'm going to be looking at that pick with, like, side eye all the time and stuff. Like, that becomes it's one of those no, yes, like Brett Favre throws where it's like, this better be a touchdown and not a pick six kind of thing, so...
I love that the two people that Mike brought up are injury prone and not Packer type wide receivers.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, I know you say you got to hop off real quick. I know there's a couple more guys that I want to talk about, so I'll probably have to end the episode for us. Are there any of your school's guys that are coming out this year that you really want to talk about? I just looked at the one guy's Raz. And if the Packers take him, then you got to wonder if that was like a little kid got in the room and was like, I like the name.
There's not a Michigan receiver worth taking anytime. McCulley, like, and that's the thing is, like, McCulley is one of those, he should be a good, like, size, height, strength guy, but he just doesn't play to it enough. Like, you watch him... And Westendorf said it all the time. He's like, does he know he's 6'5"? Like, there were so many times. And, like, the times that he does get a jump ball, like, he times the jump ball up well and stuff, it looks great. It looks textbook to how you'd want it to look. And then the other times you're kind of like, be 6'5". Like, go be 6'5" and bail out your true freshman quarterback kind of thing. So, like, he's a priority UDFA maybe in the 7th round kind of thing. But if he goes any earlier than that, good luck to you. I wish you the best, but I can't see Green Bay taking... Because that's, like I said, he would have had to put up a green RAS card for me to even think,
yeah,
like...
there's a lot of red.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing is, like, he'd have to be like a... like, MVS had wards, EQ had some wards, like... But they were, like, 9.5 RAS guys at 6'5 plus kind of thing. McCulley's the 6'5 part, but he's not the athlete, and like I said, the production doesn't match. And this was on a roster where you go into the season thinking, who else is gonna deserve targets other than, like, they had Marsh step up as a true freshman, but it's like, he just didn't live up to the billing as much as they needed him to this season. So
yeah, the only green part of his Raz report card is his height. The rest of it is all red.
Yep, so we're not pumping him out yet at wide receiver. There's a lot of other positions we're doing well at, but wide receiver's not one of them. That's what happens when you only throw the ball 15 times a game. You can't get the recruits that, like in Ohio State, who's throwing the ball 35 times a game can.
Yeah, that's what I got to say about the Iowa guys. I will talk about, there's 3 of them I'll talk about here in a minute, but Mike, is there anybody else you want to mention before you hop off here real quick?
No, I think, like, because Hurst was the one that I wanted to get into just because I know, like you said, he was going to be, like, the darling, and stuff. Yeah, I just feel like it's one of those weird classes where there's the chance they swing on someone, like, round 2, round 3, or they're not going to take one till, like, 6 or 7 kind of thing. So, it just, unless... they do some kind of deal where they get a player and an early pick, like even if they get like a player and a round 4 back, then like, Reed is the one going out, let's say, then maybe it's like, okay, like whatever round 3 receiver they pick, okay, I can get on board with it, but like, I just don't see a lot of guys where without another move, you're kind of like, oh, that guy's gonna make an instant impact and have a key role on the team, because it's like, that's the thing is it's like and that's the other part we didn't even talk about is like for them to draft a guy early on day 2, that guy's gonna have to leapfrog Wicks, Reed, even more. I know people are gonna roll their eyes at that, but it's like that guy's gonna have to somehow be wide receiver 3 or 4 early in the season to like justify the pick. Like Dan said, on a roster that's looking to be contenders, it's a really narrow street to navigate for like that pick to quote unquote be where all the angst over Golden not being able to get consistent snaps as a round 1 pick in a season where Watson was out half the season, Reed was out for like the middle third of the season, like and then in a year where the payoff for the Parsons trade, no first round pick, and it's like, oh, that's our first pick and he can't, that's the thing is like, will he even be active on game days? And like, oh, like no one's gonna love the day 2 pick who can't even be active on game days, and that's a year after like Gutekunst or LaFleur is finding excuses to make Gutekunst's round 3 pick active on game days kind of thing. So, I just can't see it unless there's just a no-brainer, no duh. You gotta just take that guy because, and I'm not doing this because he's from Ohio State, but like because Carnell Tate gets seen with 2 different bong mask photos and he somehow slips to 52. Like that's the only scenario where I'm like, screw it, I don't care what else is on the board. Like just take, like you can't let him slide any further kind of thing. Like that would literally be the only one where it's like
GPT, give me images of Carnell Tate smoking bongs so he can fall to 52.
You'd have to have like a museum curated video of gas mask bongs in his closet to drop that.
And MTV style, like welcome to my bong mask room.
My collection of 100 of them.
And I only go there because weed is like I said, I think that's one of the few where the Packers will say like weed, whatever kind of thing. Like all the other things that could get you to fall more than a round down the board, Packers aren't touching those kind of guys. So yeah, that's where I'll say. But Dan, I'm going to just say it for myself. Thank you so much for joining us. If you two turn this into a Star Wars parody episode, go for it. You have my consent as co-host, and I will happily listen to it. But Dan, thanks for joining. Joe, thanks for taking us to the end, and I'll catch you guys later.
See you, Mike.
So, with that being said, we're not going to be on too much longer. I just know there's probably a few more guys that we could probably talk about. I know you got a couple Ohio State guys that you'll probably want to mention. I know there's a few Iowa guys that I want to mention, but no round specifics. Are there any guys that you were like, that could be an interesting guy on the Packers roster with what they've got already?
Yeah. One guy that stuck out to me as I was kind of looking through it, I'll be completely honest, I focused a lot on higher, second, third, fourth round kind, where, because in my opinion, if you are going wide receiver, I feel like it can't be I know we kind of put his name in different spots here, but it's like a Savion Williams, like, let's see what he can do. Like it needs to be something where there's a specific role you have in mind for him, and he's going to make the team, and you're hoping that he develops into what you kind of want. And one guy is Malik Benson out of Oregon.
Okay.
Not a whole lot there in terms of like the overall product. I forget where he was before he ended up in Oregon. That's right. He was at Alabama and Florida State. He was also a JUCO guy early.
So he's an old guy.
He's an older guy, yeah. But he has just kind of like an all-around skill set of everything you kind of want something to do. He just kind of has he's got the mental thing there. You can see like the wheels turning. He needs to polish a lot of it. I think if he can find himself into the right type of situation that teaches him exactly how he needs to be executing it, feels like the Packers offense is a good spot for guys like that, where they can they can take sort of those raw things and just say, you just need to be able to do it this way. He feels like a guy that has sort of that intangible side that they love to go in, like guys like a Savion Williams, and hope that he projects out, but just kind of a higher upside overall. And he sure-handed. 2.3 drop rate. Like, he's a lot of these guys that I've looked at, like, it's the drop rate isn't crazy. Like, it's, if you're gonna be here, catch every ball that gets thrown to you and then do all the dirty work that we ask you to do. And yeah, I think there's, and I think also too, a lot of these guys that I've looked at, 2-3 spots that they've ended up. I don't know how. I would love to hear, maybe even someone like Mafi talk about this. Feels like that kind of, it's at least right now still has teams take another step back off of you, and maybe that lets him fall to a lower spot, like a 4th or 5th round, where the value for a pick like that outweighs any of the other stuff.
The age thing is going to be one of those things that we're going to be dealing with for a while because of NIL. We're done with the COVID. I think this is the last year for the COVID stuff, so we're not having to worry about it there. But NIL is going to drive age up. A lot of teams anymore, unless, and I got to say this just because I'm looking at his Raz card, and there's a lot of red there too. He did great with the speed stuff. It's all the agility stuff that he kind of struggled with. But kind of like Mike was saying, if you're an athlete, they don't really care about a lot of the other stuff. So, I kind of look at Tank Dell. Tank Dell was a hell of an athlete, and that's the only reason that got him drafted at the spot that he was drafted. And now we're kind of seeing it where, okay, well, now he can't stay healthy.
Right.
So that's kind of the thing there. Now, I got to preference this because I know a lot of people are going to take this and say, well, you can't just go by the test scores. I understand that, but that's all we can go off of. We can go off the film and we can go off the test scores. We're not in that guy's head. We're not in his entourage and know what's going on with things. He could have just been having a bad day with the testing and just couldn't do it. So, but 5'11", 189 is what they've got him on his Raz card. So he's a little bit smaller, but if he's a sure-handed guy, if he's a quick learner, that's something teams will look into also. I don't think they're gonna take a chance. Well, I can't say that because somebody took a chance on, or there's other teams that have taken chances on low Raz guys, like the one that comes to mind is TJ Tampa. TJ Tampa was highly talked about going into the draft, but then shit the bed when it came to Raz, and I think he still went in the 2nd round. Now I don't know how that's turned out for him, but some teams are willing to overlook certain things with players as long as they believe they can fit the system somewhere. And, maybe that's something Malik Benson is, that he can fit the system and they're not too worried about it. But, so one of the guys that I was kind of looking at was Caleb Douglas out of Texas Tech. The main note that I have on him, because it really popped, and I know it just goes with what I've been saying throughout the friggin' episode, is he's a willing run blocker. And the reason I add that is because he was really getting into the run blocking. It wasn't just, I put a hand on him. No, he was getting physical with the guys that he was told to block. Good speed, good size, shifty, good hands catcher, and his routes look pretty solid. So, that could be somebody that could be, mid-round guy. The one that I want to talk about, and this one, like I said, is the guy that makes me believe that there is some kind of Matrix thing going on. is Max Tomczak out of Youngstown State, and he's a small guy. I think he's 5. Let me see if I can find it real quick so I don't talk at all. I think he's excuse me. What is it?
I see 6'195" on mine.
I got the Raz cards up here, so let me pull it up.
That's not Raz.
5'11", 194. So, he is a little bit on the... He's right at that threshold level where he's not super small, but he's not elite height. The knocks on him is his strength kind of sucks when it comes to bench press. He only put up 12 reps. His vert and broad are kind of shitty, but then all the other stuff, like his agility and his speed grades are pretty solid for him. But I had to ask this in our draft chat with a lot of the guys that do draft podcasts. Sorry, for some reason I got a cough fit now going on. Do we trust PFF rankings or stats? And the reason I say that is PFF has him listed as dropping nothing this past season. He had 70 catches and no drops. Now, the games that I was able to watch on him, there were some iffy possibilities there. I could see where a couple of them could be not catches. Or, could be more batted away than catches, or maybe it was overthrown over him, so it wouldn't have been a catchable ball anyway. But there were a couple that, and this may be some of my old school tendencies, if the ball hits your hands, you better make the catch. And there were a couple of those that I saw, it's like, okay, well, now I consider that a drop. But obviously PFF doesn't if they're saying he had no drops for the 2025 season. So with that saying, he's a good route runner, stout run blocker. Again, question mark per PFF, 0 drops. Maybe more quick than fast, more production out of the slot. And I say he's a bit undersized. And of course, like Mike said with Ted Hurst, Youngstown State is not like a world burner when it comes to college football. So you've got to wonder, what the play type, if he can make the jump or if he's just going to be a practice squad guy. But I really liked what I saw out of him. And of course, I think somebody mentioned that he is a nephew of Mike Tomczak.
It's his dad, isn't it?
Oh, is it his dad?
Yeah, I think it's his dad.
Okay, well, I thought somebody told me it was his uncle.
Let me see. He's a volunteer coach at Youngstown State. I swear it said it was maybe you're right. Of course, the Google AI says that it is his dad, but I'm not sure I trust all that.
Well, yeah, that's AI. I don't.
Yeah, that's rough.
That's whole Matrix shit going on again with that stuff too. But so either way, if dad, uncle, whatever you want to go with it, Mike Tomczak played in the league for a while, both Bears and he was a Packers quarterback at one time. So that would be a fun connection there. So I don't know if he'll go. Maybe he actually made 70 catches and had no drops, and that gives him, a team says, okay, well, we like your hands, so we're going to take a flyer on you with a late round pick. But I really did like him. And like I said earlier, I was really surprised that some of the guys that the Packers have been listed as talking to are like 5'7", like DT Sheffield out of Rutgers is like 5'7". And that's not typical, but so we're about an hour and a half. Let's go ahead and throw out. I'm going to let you have the air for a little bit to go on with your Ohio State guys, and then I'll talk a little bit about my Iowa guys, and we'll get the hell out of here.
You want me to focus on just wide like Carnell Tate, or
that's up to you. If you think that there's a chance the Packers have a shot at him, or you just want to talk him up, go for it.
I mean, there's no I'm only one man, and I can only ask for so many blessings in this world. There's no chance they're gonna get Carnell Tate. Like in a different draft, Carnell Tate goes number 1 overall in this. I mean, he was just like, it's as an Ohio State fan, especially when you talk about wide receiver, it is a embarrassment of riches to watch Ohio State football when you get to the wide receiver position. And he just like it. He's been there's been the long list of Marvin Harrison Jr., now Jeremiah Smith, and these guys dominate the headlines in college football. But Carnell Tate, he has, especially with the way that Marvin Harrison has fallen off in the first couple of years here at Arizona. Obviously, there's a little bit more that goes into that, I think. Carnell Tate just is he kind of it almost kind of ends up being, you want to take the second banana out of Ohio State because they have a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder of needing to kind of prove themselves, and I guess not so much chip on their shoulder they need to prove themselves, but they have to work a little bit harder at times than maybe a Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jeremiah Smith needs to. Carnell Tate has exploded in this offense. I think it speaks a lot to what Brian Hartline did as the wide receivers coach there. I know he's gone now, but like Carnell Tate was truly like a third, fourth option on this Ohio State team a couple of years ago, and now he's arguably a top 2, top 3 pick in the draft this year. He's gonna be really fun to watch, and I think I think he overtakes Marvin Harrison Jr.
That must be a common theme with you Pack-A-Day people, because Sarah Kelleher said the same thing last week when it came to running backs, that it's almost preferred to take the guy that's been a backup at the
right,
and because we don't need a star running back. We need a guy who's used to being a backup, so they come in with that chip on their shoulders. So it must be a Pack-A-Day theme. Maybe Andy Herman's over there telling you need to point this. But
we've got our marching orders.
Ohio State is similar to Alabama in that way that they're constantly pumping out wide receivers. You could even really throw Ole Miss in there, because Ole Miss has a couple in this draft. They always seem to produce some kind of wide receiver out there. So again, I always seem to get my hopes up when it comes to an Alabama or an Ohio State wide receiver, and it just never comes to fruition. So, and it's kind of weird saying that, being I am a Hawkeyes fan, and the Hawkeyes tend to face the Buckeyes now and again, and it's like, I don't want to. Even though they've played them relatively well over the years, it's still because of the talent that Ohio State tends to bring in because of their reputation. I mean, you could say it's NIL now, but no, it's more reputation than anything at this point. It's similar to Alabama. It's reputation. You're coming from one of the big schools. There's a better chance you're going to get drafted than if you're going to Montana or Youngstown State or something like that. So it's so easy to be able to go in and watch Ohio State, because okay, well, that guy's probably going to get drafted. That guy's probably going to get drafted. That guy's probably going to get drafted. So with that being said, there are 3 Iowa guys coming out in the wide receiver position this year for the Hawkeyes. You've got Seth Anderson, who was a transfer in, and I just blanked on where he transferred out of. I think it was one of the Georgia schools. Then you have Jacob Gill, who came from Northwestern, and then you've got my dude, Caden Weegan. The thing that I have to say about the three of them is you cannot watch film on them. And it's not because they're horrible on film, it's because there is no film on them. And yes, you can watch their route running. Yes, you can watch their blocking. Yes, you can watch this stuff. They do occasionally get some catches in there, but for some reason, the Hawkeyes cannot get a quarterback in there to throw a ball. And even if they get a quarterback in there that can throw a ball, Ferentz, for some reason, don't want him to throw a ball. He just wants to run the ball. With that being said, all three of them have tested well. I believe all three of their RAS cards are green. Weejan is the outlier when it comes to height. The other two are within the 6'1", 6'2" range. Weejan is, I think they said he was like 5'8", 5'9". I've often wondered if he would be better off taking a positional change and just calling himself a running back, because that's pretty much what. Oh, I was wrong. McGill is in the yellow. I thought he had a green card, but Seth Anderson's green. Gill is orange and Weejan is orange. I'm sure Weejan's is more because his height and weight are going to be in the red. And he kind of struggled a little bit with the agility. But yeah, he's 5'8", 193. But the thing about Caden Weejan is, if you are going to draft him, the main reason you are drafting him is because he is a special teams ace. He's a what's the award? It's the Jet Award. 2-time Jet Award winner for returners. He's been all Big Ten the last 2 years when it comes to returns. I think he was like second team All-Pro this past season because of returns. Basically, once the ball is in his hand, there's a pretty good shot he's housing it. Or at least getting you very good field position if he's not housing it. Anderson and McGill, I can't answer that. And I don't think any Hawkeye fan can give you a legit answer on them because we just can't see any of it. Not that they're not talented, it just they weren't used. I think when I was actually looking at the stats, the best year Seth Anderson had was his sophomore year, and that was when he was at a different school. and it was a small school. I can't even think of what school he started out. I think it was like Southern Georgia something, or Georgia, Atlanta, or some shit like that. It was a smaller school, but I do know that Gill came from Northwestern. I think again he had a better year at Northwestern than he did with Iowa, just because they didn't use their wide receivers properly. But I do know per Easton Butler that they've met with both Seth Anderson and Jacob Gill. So maybe the Packers see something in them that they're willing to. Well, I mean, the Packers tend to like Iowa guys anyway, so it wouldn't surprise me if they take a flyer on one of them, even if it's a UDFA. But if I had to have my preference, and if you wanted to fix special teams, if you're going to draft a guy specifically for special teams, Caden Weejan. That's all I got to say, Caden Weejan.
It's Joe. It's the name I'm going to start throwing around to my family to make it sound like I know what the hell I'm talking about. It's like, you guys might be talking about Carnell Tate, but have you heard of Caleb Weejan?
Caden Weejan.
Caden Weejan.
And I had to correct a friend of the show, Jake Shavink, on the last name because it's spelled Wet Gin, Wetjen, but it's pronounced Weetjen. So. Yeah, it's a really funky name, but I think there's a video of Tim Dwight, and I don't know if you remember who Tim Dwight was. He was a big-time special teams guy from Iowa, but he made it into the league, and he was the guy that returned the kickoff for a touchdown in the Atlanta Falcons Broncos Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
He said that out of both of them, he would take Caden Weejan over Tim Dwight any day of the week.
You sold me, Joe. I'm in.
So, with that being said, we're almost 15 minutes away from being 2-hour conversation. I'm sure there's much, much more that we could talk about. I know there's a few more names in there, but as you can tell, I'm kind of having a coughing fit, so my throat's getting a little dry. But Dan, why don't you go ahead and plug what you're up to these days and where people can find you at?
Yeah, I mean, right now, like in the off season here, it's Pack-A-Day podcast on Mondays with Camille Davis and Monty Moore. We have an awesome time over there. We try to go a little bit off the wall topic wise, especially now that we're in the off season. We just finished up a Brian Gutekunst era March Madness bracket to try to decide who the best player from the Brian Gutekunst era officially is. No surprise we went with Jordan Love. But the discussion that led us there to the end was very interesting. If you're interested, Daniel Whelan was the 15th ranked player. We had a bunch of fans vote on who they thought was some of the best players, and Daniel Whelan was one of the highest vote getters in the
Celtic Cannon
era. Exactly. So yeah, we have a lot of fun over there every Monday on the Pack-A-Day podcast.
So here's the big question, and the people have got to know. Is Lombardi Bar coming back for another season this year?
The discussions are ongoing, and so for legal reasons, I cannot comment at this time.
Well, you know, the people have got to know, so we've got to know pretty soon. And I know Pickett is probably definitely.
Pickett was one of the first people that was just like, I'm in.
But it's always great to talk to you, Dan. I know we're probably going to do another Star Wars episode at some point in this off season. And speaking of, I keep wanting to throw this out there. Once the draft is over, my off-season off-topics are going to be back. I've already got a good slew of guests that a lot of names that it's one of those things that I just started emailing randomly. Like, oh, this person's never going to get back to me. And they actually got back to me. So I've got some names coming out, some TikTokers. I got an ex-baseball player going to be coming on and all that good stuff. So, be sure to tune in for that. Of course, we're going to get Dan back. My buddy James, we'll get him back on for a couple episodes of talking. We'll allow Kawano to come back on and talk Star Wars with us too. So look forward to that. Dan, do you want to pitch your social real quick?
Yeah, if you want to find me, pretty much the only place I'm really at nowadays is over on Blue Sky. You can find me there at Dano the Mano.
You can find me over there at Iowa Joe. I do have my Twitter account. I'm not really overly active on there, just kind of pitching the show most of the time, and I still do have some chat groups. So if you need to reach out to me, you can DM me on either or. Find the show Ohana_Packers on the tweet machine. Don't have one on Blue Sky yet because I have a hard enough time keeping my own page up to date, let alone the show's page. Facebook, please go over and follow our Facebook page. We're trying to hit that 100 follower mark so we can start doing some live streams over on Facebook. We are doing the giveaway of the goodies from Hawaii, autograph stuff, a couple things from here in Iowa. The way you enter is you just go over and subscribe to the Ohana Packers Edition over on Facebook. Once we hit 100, we are going to be doing a giveaway on that. Be on the lookout for our live stream for the draft. We're hoping to hit the 100 followers by the draft because we are doing our day 2 live stream where Mike and I bring on a bunch of different people. So Dan, if you're available, you're more than welcome to hop on with us. If we can get enough people, we can rotate them in and out. And the only 2 dummies that'll probably be there the whole time is me and Mike. But that's going to be day 2 of the draft. Trying to think if there's anything else. Mike is Kawano Mike on all his socials. I think that's about it. As Mike would say, aloha and go Pack go.